She kicked the door wide open before I could even catch my breath, storming into my grandfather's house with a camera already rolling, pointing it at his war medals like they were proof of some crime. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about rules or neighborly disputes. It was about someone trying to erase my family's legacy and claim it as her own. And the worst part, she laughed in my face when I told her to leave. I had just arrived at Carter Ranch, the land my family had cared for since 1925. The wooden sign still hung by the gate, weathered by nearly a century of sun and rain. Harold, my grandfather, would have loved to see the wildflowers blooming along the fence, untouched and free. After the longest drive of my life, I thought I'd finally made it home. I took out my phone to snap a picture, caught the afternoon sun glowing against his metals inside the front window. I uploaded it without thinking my mistake. The house number was in the corner of the frame, and before I could delete it, I heard heavy footsteps crunch across the gravel. The next thing I knew, the screen door slammed against the wall and in barged Cynthia, late 40s, sharp auburn hair pulled so tight it dragged her whole face upward, white blazer blinding in the light. She didn't introduce herself. She just announced HOA inspection violation documentation, as if the words gave her permission to film every inch of my grandfather's private home. I froze, my duffel bags still at my feet. She swept the camera across Harold's collection of antique tools, his diary lying open on the table, his bronze star shining in the sunlight. Fence exceeds 6 feet, penalty $150. Paint color not approved, another $100. She rattled off, adjusting the timestamp on her recorder like she'd done this 100 times before. My jaw clenched. "You're trespassing. HOA jurisdiction doesn't cover the inside of my house," I told her. She smirked. "HOA safety concerns override property boundaries." I felt my hands shaking as I lifted my own phone, recording her every move. "You need to leave." "Right now," I said, trying to sound firm, though my voice cracked. She just laughed, slapped a paper on Harold's counter with dramatic flair. 48-hour compliance notice, she declared like a villain in some bad courtroom drama. And with that, she strutted out, leaving me standing there with a forged document and a rising fury. The letters came next. My mailbox filled with official-looking envelopes stamped with seals and federal-style letterheads, except the email addresses ended in .com, not .gov. Demands for environmental assessments, threats of legal action, pages of regulations she claimed gave her power. The weight of it hit me hard. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was the problem, some outsider who didn't understand the rules anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, papers spread in front of me, wondering if Harold's legacy was about to be dismantled by a woman in a blazer with too much time on her hands. That was the moment I nearly gave up. I thought, what if fighting back only makes things worse? What if I end up exposing Harold's private history to the world, dragging his service, his values, through the mud? For a few hours, I felt completely defeated, staring at her fake letters, almost ready to pack up and leave. Then Walter called. 70 years old neighborhood historian, a man whose memory carried decades of truth. His voice was steady. "She's claiming power she doesn't have," he told me. He sent me the real HOA charter. Exterior aesthetics visible from the street, nothing more. No right to enter homes. No authority to stage surprise inspections. "Lucas," he said, "your grandfather fought this exact kind of scheme in court back in 1987. He spent weeks gathering evidence to protect the Morrison family's farm. He knew these scams always come back with new faces." That hit me. I remembered Harold's words tucked in his diary: boundaries protect community values. He wasn't just talking about fences, he was talking about standing firm when someone tried to bulldoze you with fake authority. My grandfather had faced this before, and he'd fought for people who weren't even his own family. How could I sit here and let Cynthia trample over his legacy now? So I dug in. I laid out every letter she'd sent on the dining table, comparing them with the authentic county documents Walter shared. The fonts were off. The seals were faked. The wording twisted to sound official but hollow. She was good, but not perfect. I started to see the cracks, the way she slipped up when she thought no one would notice. I realized I had something she didn't expect: the truth and the courage to use it. The showdown came fast. A week later, the elementary school cafeteria was packed, neighbors shoulder-to-shoulder, phones already out, ready to record. Cynthia arrived in her spotless white sedan, dragging a rolling suitcase of evidence behind her like she was about to argue a Supreme Court case. I stood up, my pulse hammering in my throat, and introduced myself to the crowd. "My name is Lucas Carter," I said, "and I am your newly elected mayor." Gasps, murmurs, phones swiveling to catch every reaction. Cynthia pounced. "See, this is corruption, the mayor using his office to protect his own property." Her voice was sharp, trained to manipulate. But I didn't take the bait. "Cynthia," I said, clicking to the next slide of Walter's projector, "mayors don't have the power you claim. We can't override property rights. We can't create emergency powers out of thin air, and we definitely can't break into private homes." The crowd began to nod. Questions flew at her. Where was the board vote? The 30-day notice? Who gave her a warrant? She fumbled, scattering papers, repeating the same tired line, "Emergency safety overrides property rights." But her voice was cracking now, conviction slipping. Walter rose, his voice carrying more authority than any official seal. "I've kept records of every legitimate action in this neighborhood for 40 years, he said. "Nothing she has presented is real." The room erupted. Neighbors waved their own letters, shouting, "She sent me fake EPA documents and same phony seals." Then she played her trump card, a preservation contract supposedly signed by Harold himself, handing control of the ranch to the HOA. My chest tightened. His signature looked perfect. For a second, doubt clawed at me again. But I remembered my training: never destroy evidence, always follow procedure. I handed it over to the county examiner. 5 agonizing days later, the results came back. The gymnasium was silent when the forensic expert spoke. "Hidden file data shows this document was created 3 days ago. The signature is forged. Authentication codes are missing." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "She forged Harold's name." Phones captured every angle of Cynthia's face as sweat beaded on her forehead, her lies collapsing in real time. Neighbors were furious now. "Arrest her," voices cried. "Lock her up." But the officer on scene kept it professional, explaining charges and due process. Cynthia tried to speak to reclaim control, but her words came out thin, desperate. "This community doesn't understand higher powers," she muttered, clutching her fake papers as she stumbled toward the exit. Her white blazer no longer looked powerful, just ridiculous under the harsh gym lights. And just like that, the game was over. The forged documents, the intimidation, the fake authority, it all unraveled under the weight of evidence and truth. The crowd had seen enough, and so had the law. Cynthia, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, was exposed for exactly what she was: a fraud with a camera and a stack of forgeries. The lesson: intimidation only works until someone stands up and shines a light on it.